Boris, and we all love a good cup of joe. And there's only one brew that gets my seal of approval. Deadly Grounds coffee is my guilty pleasure. Bold, robust, delicious. It's coffee that can wake the dead. With over a dozen different roasts and flavors, Deadly Grounds can satisfy the most finicky of coffee addicts. The aroma is so intoxicating. It brings all of my neighbors out of the woodwork. Deadly Grounds coffee. Coffee to die for and zombie approved. It's good to get a little deadly. Use the front door! Oh, they're so disgusting.
Persons under 18 will not be admitted.
I'm choosing to ignore the cuts and bumps and bruises. I'm cruising through these haters, leave them looking stupid. They foolish if they think they'll ever hear my conclusion. I'm through with all these part-timers and their excuses. I'm bruising eagles left and right every time I do this. I'm shooting for the top, no I'll never settle what you did. The future's in my hands, my grip will never lose it. My crew is ready to obtain the absolution, removing any doubt that we was ever fooling.
Hey, what's happening, everybody? Welcome to another kick-ass episode of Still Token with. Yeah, well, you know, I'm me, so that's just kind of who I am. And wow, I hit the wrong fucking button.
Oh, that's okay. Hello, everybody.
They changed all the buttons on here again.
Are you sure?
I'm positive, because I was supposed to go like that.
Hey there, hi there, ho there. You're as welcome as can be. Happy to be here and really looking forward to talking to Nelson. I am a fan.
Excellent, excellent. So I'm just going to jump over to Jeff.
Well, yeah, I mean, we've already put him on the screen, so, you know, is an introduction really necessary? You know?
Well, of course it is.
I want to hear it.
I
want to hear my introduction.
Well, I'm trying to figure out how I can fuck up your name, but it's too simple. I mean, seriously, Nelson Aspen. I mean, does it get any basic? Well, I guess Jeff is pretty basic too, you know. So, but yeah, let's welcome Mr. Nelson Aspen.
Thank you very much. And you know, the thing is that Nelson's not a common name, and I feel like I articulate it well. But all my life, I am mistakenly identified as Milton, and it never really made sense to me until I discovered that in a past life, I was a man named Milton. So now it doesn't seem so strange, but it still happens to me. Like I'll be at a Starbucks and the barista will call out Milton. And so you just sort of get used to it, but you did a very good job, Jeff. Thank you.
I get Godfrey and George a lot.
There you go.
Really? Wow. So you believe
you're our man Godfrey tonight. Okay.
You believe
I haven't
really?
sailed a lead balloon like that in a long time. Good heavens.
Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness. So you do believe in past lives?
Well, it was not something that I necessarily believed until I had no choice but to accept it. I'm not necessarily into the metaphysical, the paranormal, etc. However, things like being constantly mistaken as Milton, recurring dreams, serendipitous coincidences, happenstances, and the like. And I have always had this lifelong fascination with all things related to the Titanic.
Mhm.
And I had this really intense connection with the Titanic story. A lot of people do. I call them Titaniacs. But then in 1985, when Dr. Robert Ballard, the oceanographer, discovered the wreck of the Titanic, because it had sunk in 1912, but nobody knew where it was. They just sort of knew
Right.
approximately where it was, but it was so deep and so unprecise that the wreck had never been found until 1985. And because you recall from the movies that the ship split, and although it didn't split quite as the way James Cameron made it split, but it did split, and the opening of the ship released all the debris. Everything that was inside the ship started spilling out. And Ballard was looking around and he found the debris, and it was a trail of debris that led him to the wreck, which is very exciting. Anyway, 1985, he was the most famous man in the world that week. He was on the cover of every magazine and on the front page of every newspaper. And I was compelled to get in touch with him. Now, remember, 1985, no internet, the phone with the push buttons. I got the phone book out, a phone book. Today's children don't know what a phone book is. And
They don't know what push buttons are.
no, they don't know what that is. So I got in touch with the Woods Hole Oceanographic. See my prop hand to represent the phone. I got in touch with the Woods Hole Oceanographic Institute, and I said, "Hi, this is Nelson Aspen calling for Dr. Ballard." I didn't think he'd ever take the call. She puts me on hold. Less than a minute later, I hear a voice on the other end go, "Hello, Milton?" And I'm like, okay, now I know there's something there. So yeah, and I continue to be a lifelong Titanic enthusiast, but I co-host a podcast called Titanic Talk, and we interview authors, historians, actors from the films, divers. I mean, we have a very broad spectrum, but I wanted my part in the Titanic legacy. So that's why I wrote my book, which is the story of my connection with Milton Long from Worcester, Massachusetts. He's a stone's throw away from the Woods Hole Oceanographic Institute, where he was. And so that's my story and Milton's story are now published. That's exciting.
Nelson, who's your publisher?
It's called Red Sky Presents, and they have done my last 4 books, and Kindred Spirits is my 9th book, but it's my first I call it a historical fantasy, because I've had to reimagine what Milton's life would have been like if it could have continued. He passed away at the age of 29 on the Titanic. And there's only a very small amount of information available about his real life, but I had to get him onto the Titanic somehow. And I feel as if, because he passed away so young, and he could have had so much opportunity. He was a son of privilege. He was very well educated, but never did anything with it. And I felt like maybe I'm carrying the baton for Milton. So cheers. It's happy hour here in New York City. Here's to Milton.
Here's to Milton.
Here's
So
to
Milton was in England, coming back to the United States?
Yes, Milton was an American, according to his death certificate, gentleman of leisure, which is counterintuitive and a bit of a mystery that I try to solve in the book, because he was the only child of a judge and his wife in Massachusetts. He had attended both Columbia and Harvard universities, ostensibly to study to be a law clerk, but he never finished school, and he was boarding the Titanic after a holiday in San Moritz. Now, winter holidays in San Moritz, great, there's skiing and skating and all the winter activities that for very wealthy people. And so that would have been January, February, March, and he boarded Titanic in England in April on his way back to America. So it is a bit of a mystery that I've tried to fill out. Why was he in San Moritz and why was he coming back? And just, it was a kind of a forensic deep dive. And so in my story, he had an unrequited love affair on the Titanic. Because of the repressive Edwardian era, I think Milton was probably gay and had this very short and intense shipboard friendship with a young man who survived. And so in my story, Milton comes back to find out what happened to that love. And since that person survived, I know exactly what happened to that person. So I take Milton on that journey in his new body. It's kind of an odd couple buddy story, two souls, one body, and they solve the mystery of what happened to his lost love.
For people who will, like
Wow.
I am, really interested in reading this book,
Hmm.
what you've written about by Titanic itself and all of the details around the sinking, are all of those things actual real things, or did you blur a few lines to make your story more interesting?
Well, I created the dialogue between the two men.
Of course.
Obviously, I don't know what they said, but what we do know what their movements were on that last night. And so I've put that into the story as accurately as possible. The Titanic fans always want to see Molly Brown and Bruce May and Captain Smith. So those are tangential characters that make cameo appearances. So you do have time on the ship. So if you're a fan of the ship itself, if that's your thing, you do get to satisfy time aboard the Titanic. And I won't do any spoilers, but there's a lot to make the Titanic fans happy. What's interesting is that the surviving member of that couple was so devastated, obviously, the post-traumatic stress you would suffer after an incident like this, but he wrote a letter that survives to Milton's parents to give them comfort about how brave Milton was in his final moments. And it reads almost like a love letter. If you were to read it under today's perspective, you would assume it was a love letter. And he even included a photograph of himself saying to Milton's parents, "I thought you would like to see who was with your son at the end." I mean, it makes you want to cry when you think about it. And he asked if Milton's parents could send him in return a photograph of Milton. Now, I'm no psychologist, but to me, that sounds like a very intimate friendship. And I don't know, it's heartbreaking. And the survivor, like so many other Titanic survivors, did not live happily ever after. Just getting off that boat ship did not guarantee you a happy ending. In fact, quite the opposite, because it was so traumatizing. There had never been a disaster like that in modern history. It was so cataclysmic that there was tremendous post-traumatic stress, and especially for men, survivor's guilt. They came home thinking, how could I have lived when so many perished? And so few men compared to women survived, that there was also a double standard of guilt.
Wow.
Oh,
Do you-
yeah,
do
that'll
you-
tear
do-
you apart.
Yeah.
Do you know why Milton's friend survived when Milton didn't?
It's one of the great stories of Titanic lore in terms of Jack Thayer was the surviving friend. And Jack Thayer's story was very well known because he survived and testified. He was the one that drew pictures of how he felt the ship had broken apart. Most eyewitnesses, because it was so pitch dark after the lights on the ship went out, they assumed the ship slid under in one piece. And it separated before that, although not quite as dramatically as in James Cameron's film. But Jack and Milton, and this is all part of the story in my book, Milton was not a strong swimmer. And they both had different opinions about how they should make a go for it, because the boats were gone. There were no more boats to be had. And Jack was going to jump from the ship. They would stay on as long as possible, and then Jack would jump. And Milton, not being a strong swimmer, decided to descend on the railing of the ship, which of course was going like this, and sort of straddle it the way you'd slide down a banister, and make his way down to the water and then swim from there. However, Jack witnessed him be pulled under the black waters. And this is another component of my, and it's well documented, this isn't a spoiler, I've appeared in many venues telling my story, but I've had a recurring dream. I'm 61, so I've been having this dream for 60 years of sliding down a banister, which is fun. Kids love to slide down the banister. But instead of getting to the bottom and getting off the banister, I keep going into the blackness. This has been a dream. So when I read that about, and Milton was not identified, it was just the friend of Jack Thayer. When I read that, Jack's testimony, I was like, geez, I was that friend. And then when I found out his name was Milton, and so there was a very, I'll use the word forensic again. It was a forensic dive into figuring out who I was. And I just feel like Dr. Ballard confirmed it.
Wow.
Is there something you can tell us that
Oh,
doesn't
okay.
break off? I don't want to spoil all the wonderful things that no one knows that you're bringing to the book. But in doing your research, is there something about the Titanic that we all think is the truth that really isn't, or something that is the truth that we don't know?
There are so many myths surrounding the Titanic.
Conspiracy theories.
Were people really caged off from entering the classes? Was third class really kept underground? No, there were no locks on the doors, the gates. The concept of not enough lifeboats. Yes, that's true. There weren't enough lifeboats for everybody on the ship, but there were actually more lifeboats than were required by law. The laws of the day required X number of lifeboats depending on the tonnage of the ship. Controversies over men dressing as women to slip off into a lifeboat. That perpetuated itself through the story of some Chinese survivors who, you remember how Kate Winslet was floating on the panel?
Yeah.
They say a door, but it was a panel. That was actually based on the true story of some Chinese survivors who were floating on panels. The population of Chinese people were so persecuted against in those days that when the Chinese survivors, men, I would add, came in with their native wardrobe, some folks thought they were men dressed as women, and that's where that story started. Fascinating. What happened to the captain? Did the captain sort of go a little loopy and stand on the bridge like in James Cameron movie? Or other reports were that he was holding a baby in the water, and some say he was on his megaphone telling his crew to be British. We don't know. It's like the game of telephone. You're relying on testimony during what was a chaotic and traumatic event. So, but there's a million myths, and that continues to this day. Everybody wants to know, well, it was the rivets caused, or it was the way they hit the boat. It's a great mystery, and it's the mysteries that keep us so interested.
I know Boston just had a Titanic show last week.
I'm glad you actually brought that up, because Nelson and I were discussing this backstage. Now that the book is out, he's going on tour from, California to New York to London to Belfast to
Boston.
Everywhere. But he is coming to Boston because they extended that.
Oh, they did? Okay.
The Titanic exhibition is currently at the Castle at Park Plaza in Boston. And I found out that it was proving so popular, as all of these exhibitions do, that they have extended it through the month of May 2025. So I will be there on May 14th at the exhibition on the afternoon of May 14th, signing books, taking your Titanic questions, that kind of thing. So I'm really excited. And this is it is a plug, but I have no affiliation whatsoever with Davios Restaurant, but everybody keeps telling me, you got to go to Davios Restaurant. So that's my plan. I want to go to Boston. I want to do my book signing at the exhibition, and I want to go to Davios Restaurant.
We're in California coming, Nelson.
I'm going for the anniversary of the Titanic sinking is April. It struck the iceberg on April 14th, and it sank on April 15th. So to commemorate that event, and this year it'll be the 113th anniversary of the sinking. So the weekend before, April 10th through 12th, I'll be on board the Queen Mary, the original Queen Mary in Long Beach, California. They've turned it now into a hotel, a museum, a club. It's quite a beautiful venue, and it's a Titanic weekend. And I'll be with other authors, historians, actors, etc. Don Lynch, the great historian, who's sort of like the definitive master of Titanic history. So we'll all be there together, signing books and having podcasts and having fun. Then I'll proceed to Los Angeles on the actual anniversary of the sinking, April 15th. I'll be at the Four Seasons Hotel in Los Angeles to drink and toast the memories of all those who were affected by Titanic.
I may have to come there and see you.
I will be there. Get on the tip sheet. It's going to be good. Make sure you know which, because I've had this problem before. You go to I was staying at the Four Seasons on Doheny Drive, and I told my trainer, I was like, meet me at the Four Seasons in Beverly Hills. He went to the wrong Four Seasons in Beverly Hills, so I never got my workout. But yes, the Four Seasons on Doheny Drive. It's Tuesday, April 15th from 4 to 6. So come and hang out. You might see a few famous faces there too.
Cool and groovy, because we want people to buy your book and to meet you and get your autograph and all that jazz.
Absolutely.
It's really a treat. And like the Titanic community of friends that become family has been extraordinary through this podcast that I do, Titanic Talk. So we meet everybody, and the forward is by the gentleman Paul Carganilla, who's putting together the Titanic weekend on the Queen Mary, and then the amazing sketch, which you can probably see better online, but it was done by a Titanic artist named Greg DiNapoli, and I'm very proud of it, and I'm mostly happy for Milton.
So we have had a couple of comments and questions coming in, but somebody asked, what is your feeling about it supposedly actually being the Olympic that sank and not the Titanic?
What did I just say about mysteries and conspiracy theories? I mean, this is what keeps the enthusiasm alive. Hey, I love a good conspiracy theory. I seem to think we would have found out sooner if it had been a swapped out ship. But hey, never let the truth get in the way of a good conspiracy theory.
Right. And Dean Moriarty says, I'll be at the Boston event. I came here for zombies, but I'm getting history.
Oh, well, there are plenty of zombie Titanic movies, actually. There's a movie I think it's called Titanic 666. And that's the whole premise, is that there are zombies the zombies of the Titanic have taken over the new ship or something like that. But I'm so excited because I love all that stuff. I love the history. I love the dramatizations. I just love ships in general. So now it's like, where was the gay story? There was no gay. Of course there were gay people on the Titanic. Duh. So now I've told the gay story of the Titanic. So you can choose which box you want ticked. Do you want the gays? Do you want the Titanic? Do you want historical fantasy? What do you want? But it's all there for you. And I just like that I've got a slice of the Titanic pie now.
Right.
Was there a moment where you just said to yourself, I want to put myself in this, and you thought about how you could do it and decided to do historical but fantasy? Or was this a long process?
Well, it's been a 61-year-old process, really, if you think about it. But my previous two books are my memoirs, Dancing Between the Raindrops 1 and 2, the New York years and the Hollywood years. But because of my age, the first book takes place in the 80s. The second book takes place in the 90s and the aughts. So when I had come to my publisher about the proposal to do my Titanic story, and I was just going to, my own personal Titanic story, I think, is interesting enough. I don't need to embellish it in any way. And I proposed doing it, and he said, well, Nelson, you just did these other two books that are essentially period pieces. They're 80s, 90s, and aughts. Can you write the story but make it contemporary? Set in 2025. So that's when I decided, rather than Milton coming into my body, I would create a new version of me, a younger version of me, the 29-year-old me. Since Milton was 29, I made my protagonist 29. So it's that's how the historical fantasy came about. And all kudos to my editor, who is a 30-year-old who specialized in the historical fantasy genre, because that was new territory for me. And he really educated me about, if you're going to create a universe of your own making, if you're going to create this fantasy world, you have to establish the rules of that world and then follow them closely, because the fans will immediately pick up on if you break the rules for no reason. Even if you think back on I Dream of Jeannie or Bewitched, they still had their rules of witchcraft and the world in which they lived. Plus, being 30 years old, even though I can very well remember what it was like to be 30 years old, I was never 30 years old in 2025. So he was very helpful in helping me sort of bridge the generation gap and fill in those parts for Milton and the main other character that represents me, named Preston.
If you ever had the opportunity, would you go and get in a little mini sub and go down and actually see the wreckage?
Well, when I spoke to Dr. Ballard, it was with the intention of putting my hand up to go on the expedition before they had made the dive down to the actual wreck. And he was very kind, and he sent me an application to the Woods Hole Oceanographic Institute. And it was a real kind of a wake-up call for me when that came in my mailbox. And I was like, you know, I'm an actor. I don't know that I'm supposed to be doing oceanography. That's not my thing. But interestingly, and the answer is no. I wouldn't go to space, and I wouldn't go deep sea diving, but I would love to see it in a documentary or AI. Dr. Ballard now says the wreck is so deteriorated and at risk of completely evaporating into the sea that he doesn't recommend, especially after the Titan implosion. It's documented enough that you can do it virtually. You don't need to risk your life and spend hundreds of thousands of dollars to just go look at a pile of dust. We can do it virtually. Right. And it also, I would point out, is a grave of 1,500 people. I think that artifacts that spilled out, teacups and toilets and boots, that's fair game. If you want to collect that for your exhibition, great. It's fascinating. I can't wait to see it and look at it and study it. But disturbing the wreck is something else.
Yeah. Yep.
Good for you. I agree.
No, totally agree. Real quick, before we go any further, just for all our viewers and listeners, I do want to say, if you're interested in anything you're hearing tonight, purchasing the book, finding more about Nelson, just check the show notes up above or down below. All his information is there. So, okay, we can keep going.
Yep. Yeah. So that's how I feel about that. And I love museums and artifacts and things like that. And how moving can it be to see a child's shoe or a toy or someone's treasured ring or something? It's very sad. It's heartbreaking, actually.
My wife actually went last week
to the exhibition.
Yeah.
I was going to say, she didn't actually dive down there, did she?
No.
I hope she went to Davio's for dinner.
I don't know where she ate, actually. I'll have to ask her that. But she really enjoyed it.
I'm not doing a full commercial. I'm not getting paid to endorse this restaurant.
I was about to ask you.
She's always followed the Titanic stuff. She's loved it.
Everybody has some interest in Titanic, I believe. I've never met anybody who could care less about it. Everybody has some kind of interest in it. And I think, when it happened in 1912, of course, it was an unprecedented kind of disaster. So people were very interested in that for a couple of decades. And then the film versions, the Barbara Stanwyck version called Titanic in the early 50s, and then Walter Lord's magnificent book, A Night to Remember, was made into a film in 1958, I believe. So that rejuvenated interest. My interest really came on strong in 1972 when I saw the Poseidon Adventure, because I was so swept up in the excitement of the story of the Poseidon Adventure that's what really fervently got me interested in other maritime disasters, especially the Titanic, but also the Andrea Doria, the Lusitania.
Yep. And
then Ballard's Discovery, 85, rejuvenates it again, and probably nothing bigger than James Cameron's 1997 film reintroduced it to not only that generation, but it's still doing it. Like children who are 10 years old are interested in Titanic because of the movie. Like, so it's fascinating to think that a disaster of that proportion could spawn artists and authors and explorers. So if that's the silver lining, that's really the greatest legacy of Titanic, is that it has spawned goodness out of all that tragedy.
Right. It's a piece of history that can never be erased.
And certainly, if you think, oh, that could never happen again. You know, they thought it was unsinkable. Ha ha ha! No, nature showed them. But what is the Titan submersible? It's the same thing. They thought, oh, well, we can just get in this tin can and go down there. Give me $100,000 and I'll take you down in my tin can. It's hubris, and it's history repeating itself.
Right.
I was going to ask you if you've had any experience in cruising, and I'll reword the sentence. Did you get
yes
on? Yes
and yes.
Yes. Did you get onto ships? Did you have to immerse yourself in the cruising industry to understand what it's like to be on these luxury ships, so that your characters could really come to life, or did just reading books and stuff do enough for you?
Well, I'm lucky. My parents made sure I was very well traveled. So as a child, we were going on cruises back in the days when it wasn't like some cruise ships with water slides and all that, zip lines and things like that. Luxury liners, fancy schmancy. And then because I was an actor and I was interested in film, when I was 15, they sent me on an AFI, American Film Institute cruise by myself. I was 15 years old and they sent me off on this cruise. I had a nice young lady chaperone. I think my father was hoping things would work out differently. So, but I was on this cruise with Olivia de Havilland and Glenn Ford and King Vidor. Now there's a remote name you don't hear every day. But it swept me up with all my interest in film and combined it with cruising. And now I just finished. I did 2 cruises this year, one for pleasure on a Ritz-Carlton yacht, which was really spectacular. And they've actually offered me a speaking engagement to come on and speak about my entertainment career as well as Titanic. And then in January, at the end of January, Cunard booked me to be a guest speaker on the maiden voyage of their new gorgeous ship, the Queen Anne. And that was marvelous. I got on, they sailed from Southampton, England, to New York. I boarded in New York, and I was on the leg down to Miami. And then I got off in Miami before it continued on to the Panama Canal, up to San Francisco, and then off to Australia, where it finished its tour before heading back to England. But I loved I was only on there for 4 days, but it was amazing. And I got to speak about the Titanic, meet wonderful people, explore the ship. Because for me, I'm just like that little boy in the Poseidon Adventure that just wants to go up to the bridge and just wants to go down to the engine room. And I just love ships. And someday, I know you're an R-rated show, so I could probably do it now, but my pants are too tight. I'll show you my Poseidon tattoo someday.
I don't know. I mean, to me,
too many punchlines. I'm just.
Oh my god!
I'm trapped.
Well,
the things that I was gonna say, I had to thought.
To me, talking about or sitting in and listening to you talk about the Titanic while on a cruise ship,
A maiden voyage, no less.
A maiden voyage, no less, kind of makes me. It's like these people that sit in little rubber rafts out in the ocean and watch Jaws on shore.
Or Land of the Lost. Remember Land of the Lost?
Yes.
Yeah.
I get where you're going, Jeff, but the truth is, anybody, especially in today's generation, that goes on a cruise ship, they want to find a staircase and do the staircase from Titanic, or they want to go to the very front of the ship and do the Kate Winslet, Leonardo DiCaprio thing. It's because of the Titanic.
I've done all that, actually.
Yeah, but it's the presence. It's the presence of Titanic in popular culture that actually helps the cruise industry. People are more interested in cruising than ever before.
Right. See, now when we were on the cruise, the first thing I did was say, okay, I want a balcony outside, and the first thing I did is go, Okay, I'm on one floor down from the lifeboat. I can make that jump, no fucking problem.
unless you get and you're hit by a rogue wave and you go the other way.
Well, yeah, but then that's just karma, I guess.
Nelson, I want an opinion from you as an expert.
I'm full of them.
I've heard that about you. My lay partner and I saw the film, the Cameron film, 15 times. We were so enchanted, entranced, horrified, and believe it or not, actually, it was with all that tragedy, we walked out holding hands. It was kind of romantic. Why do you think the Cameron film is the best of the ones made? The others are very good with big stars. What was different about what Cameron did, do you think? Or do you think it's not the best film?
It's not. To me, it's Night to Remember, 1958 is my favorite. Until they do the movie version of Kindred Spirits, that is.
Of course.
But I was living in Los Angeles at the time, and a friend of mine, my podcast co-host, Alexandra Boyd, she was auditioning for the film, and they wanted the actors to write a monologue from the point of view of a passenger. And she, again, who had the internet? That wasn't, and we weren't holding the world of information in our hands. And she's like, "Oh, Nelson, you know everything about the Titanic. Will you help me?" And I'm like, "I know exactly who you are going to be and how we're going to write it." And she got a part in the film, and she did that. And I remember going to the Beverly Center in Los Angeles, and I saw Titanic 8 times in the theater. And even at the time, it wasn't that I thought it was great, but it was great in its ability to be a spectacle and to tell a tried and true haves and have-nots Romeo and Juliet story, but we fell for it. And that's a credit to the director. It's a credit to the actors, but it was this romantic setting. And I don't know why we romanticize something of 9/11 proportions. Like you would not see James Cameron doing Romeo and Juliet in the Twin Towers on 9/11. But there's something about Titanic, I think, because I've decided it's because it represents an age that doesn't exist anymore. The Edwardian age of women can't vote, get your corsets on, poor people downstairs, rich people upstairs, whatever that is. That's why we're interested in it. Maybe a little bit like the Civil War and why people want to watch Gone with the Wind. It just represents something you won't see for the best. Right. But I think that's what it is. It's another time.
Yeah, time needs to pass before you can do something like that. It's got to be more in the history.
Are you telling me he is going to do a Romeo and Juliet 9/11 movie?
I'm not saying that. I'm just that we're 50 years away from anybody even thinking about doing that.
Yeah, well,
maybe.
I'll be on to my next life.
Hollywood's running out of shit to do, so who knows?
Well, yeah.
Nelson, do you think your book is romantic?
Oh my God, I'm so. I just thought people might get a kick out of it for the Titanic aspect. People are very captivated by the mystery, because of finding the unrequited love. But I'm so delighted by the reaction to the love story and how it gets pretty steamy in there too, and people responding to that, regardless of the sexuality, men, women, straight, gay, whatever, are really gripped by this love story that transcends time. And I was thinking about, remember that Christopher Reeve movie, Somewhere in Time?
Yes.
And that, to me, that's a very identifiable romantic prospect when you think about a love that reaches across time. And I feel like I pulled it off. I wasn't confident I could, but I think I did it.
Best place to buy your book is on Amazon or elsewhere?
You can, if it's not in your bookstore, you should absolutely be outraged and complain. But otherwise, you can go to Amazon and pick it up there. I think it's $17. The Kindle's $8.99. Or check on my website, nelsonaspen.com. And there's my full book tour schedule, and I might be in a city near you, whether that's
the best place to
Southern California, Boston, Baltimore. I forgot Baltimore.
So like I always say, folks, you can order it on Amazon or Barnes and Noble and all these bookstores, but no, seriously, get off your ass and go to one of his book signing events and meet him in person. That is the way to get the book.
It's really
Best way to get the book.
We're gonna, after I get through with the United States, I'm going to London at the end of May, and then I'm going to Belfast. And Belfast is important because that's where Titanic was built.
Mm-hmm.
And I was last in Belfast before James, it wasn't before James Cameron's movie, but it was before Titanic has changed the entire city. The definitive Titanic museum, hotel, distillers, Belfast has just become ground zero for all things Titanic. And I'm finishing up my book tour there. I will go to Australia in December, but it's to be in Belfast, and the office building where Thomas Andrews designed and the builders planned the ship, they're still intact, and that has become the hotel bar, and that's where I'm going to have my signing at the hotel. If you look at the pictures, the windows are the same as Thomas Andrews would have seen when he was sitting there sketching out his blueprints. Amazing.
So very, very cool, sir.
Yeah, I'm excited. Right. I hope it rejuvenates and continues to fan the flames of Titanic passion.
Who do you want to play you/Milton when the movie is made?
I was having this conversation today with a filmmaker, actually, and I'm not really up on my 20-something-year-old actors. Like Timothée Chalamet can't play everything, so right. I'm not sure we need a recognized actor. I'd love to be in on the casting session, but I think it'd be more fun to have the supporting roles and the specialty roles have a name for those kinds of roles, but have new, fresh talent come in for the younger roles.
Okay. New, fresh talent. I'm trying to remember the last time I saw one of those. But
wow.
But hey, yeah, he said earlier Milton coming in him, and I left that alone.
You did.
So
you did.
I did. Because I was going to say that's a whole different book, but I didn't say that.
That's the Dancing Between the Raindrops book. I made it through the 80s and lived to tell about it. So yeah, that's why the other book is called Dancing Between the Raindrops, because my dad used to say to me, Jesus Christ, I don't know how you survive. It's like you're dancing between the raindrops. And that really has been the story of my life.
Are you going to be also signing at the Grove in Los Angeles?
I'm not at the Grove. I'm just doing the Four Seasons in LA and the Queen Mary in Long Beach. So that's
tell Harlan to book you out of here in Palm Springs at Just Fabulous.
He had mentioned Palm Springs to me. I just couldn't get there. I've only got so many times in the week, and also Palm Springs, which I love. I haven't been to Palm Springs in years. I was dating a golfer. We spent a lot of time in Palm Springs. Oh my God, I got the worst case of food poisoning in my life in Palm Springs. I'll never forget it because it was my own mistake. I had sushi and I thought, who eats sushi in the desert? Amateur move, real rookie move. But
wow.
Yeah, I also, when I left Los Angeles, I gave up driving. So I was like thinking I wouldn't even know how to get to Palm Springs without a car. So, but yeah, we'll make it happen someday. I would love to get back.
I know you have an early out.
Yep.
I've enjoyed this so much.
Me too, guys. I hope I didn't talk your ears off. I just
no, we didn't.
You get me started on Titanic.
I loved it.
I mean, we really only talked about the book and Titanic. We didn't even go into your illustrious careers and other things that you've done.
Well, I'll tell you what. In July, I'm doing Kindred Spirits: A Titanic Tale, the musical, for 2 nights only in July here in New York City, where I'm going to tell some of these of Milton's stories, but with music to go with it. So we'll do another show in advance of the July engagement, if you like.
Where will you be performing in New York?
It'll be at a club. It's actually the club where I started out in 1986. Called Don't Tell Mama.
Of course,
it's still there on West 46th Street. I've performed everywhere from the Sydney Opera House to London's West End, but I always come home to Don't Tell Mama, especially when I'm trying out new material. It's really home for me.
I think I sang there the first month it was open.
Well, then you're really dating yourself because it's been
I'm
around
single.
a while.
Of course, I'm dating myself. Nobody else would.
I thought your hand looked a little calloused.
Hey, baby.
Jesus.
My best friend. I'm left-handed.
Wow. So, and I do want to say, you know, I know you're a runner. As the weather gets warmer, be careful of the humidities.
The humidities?
Yes.
Yes. Well,
You say humidity is your kryptonite.
oh, yes, I have said that. I don't, that's the only time I will opt for the treadmill. I don't mind this ice and humidity. Otherwise, I'm out there every day.
Yes, Ryan, I am a handyman. Thank you for that.
So, like you said, you do have a hard out. We're a few minutes past, but you have dinner plans, so we don't want to keep you.
That's the nice thing about New York. I just have to go across the street.
Oh, well, in that case, they'll hold the table.
Especially in Harlem. So many wonderful restaurants.
It's great. So you got to get back to the Apollo Theater. You let me know when you're in New York, and call on me anytime, guys. I'm grateful for the generosity of spirit.
And you said May 14th you'll be in Boston.
May 14th in Boston.
Okay.
Yeah. Now, are the times on your website?
They are. It's 3 to 5, but all those upcoming appearances are on the website.
3 to 5.
You'll be done in
figure
time
it
for
out.
happy hour.
Well, our shows are always Wednesday night.
Well,
I just got to see. Yeah, we'd have to get up there by 3, get there in at 3, and get the hell out of there by 3:30.
Why can't you broadcast? Why can't you broadcast from anywhere?
Oh, I could if I broke down the computer and everything, and you moved your books over so I could set it up.
I'm just on my phone. You're over technicing yourself.
He has buttons he has to push, so all of us can be here together at
That's
the same
why his
time.
hand is calloused.
Both.
Ask his wife.
I was going to say that's marriage. Never mind.
See, I figured you guys out, and Jeff, you're speak no evil. Right?
Sometimes. Not always.
Tonight he is for some reason. Usually
Yeah,
he's all
no.
speak evil.
Well, I had 1,000 things pop into my head with the tight pant bullshit. But
So did I.
I didn't say a thing. I figured I would be nice.
I'll wear harem pants next time. I promise.
So, yep. My mind was just like, rubber raft. Does it grow to the Titanic? What's going on here?
Right.
It's the tattoo, kids. It's the tattoo.
So now the next time you come on, I want to see tassels.
Well, okay. My mother used to brag that she could make them go in opposite directions. I never saw her do it, but she claimed she could.
Okay.
I'm glad you never saw her do it.
Yeah, well, I've already seen too much in my life.
Yeah, life's tough enough. You don't need that.
Sorry, Mom.
So real quick, we're going to wrap this up because Nelson does have dinner plans. We do not want to keep him too long.
You don't like me when I get hungry.
Right. And Jeff's going to be happy because then he can go eat dinner his early. Sorry. So I was reading a comment. Nelson, where do you like to interact with your fans on the social medias?
Oh, thanks for asking. Instagram is probably the best one. I am also on Threads and X, and my 21-year-old intern did valiantly set me up with a TikTok account that I just can't really get into it yet, but I'm trying. But Instagram, Nelson Aspen on Instagram is really my favorite. And I just did my first live chat on Monday, and that was super fun.
Awesome. Mr. Jeffrey Mark.
Well, you know where to find me on Facebook. Jeffrey Mark is just like how it's spelled right in front of you. Jeffrey Mark Showbiz on Instagram. I have my other podcast, Jeffrey Mark Plays Ella, every week on a platform near you. And this Saturday, I'll be on a show out of Seattle talking about famous celebrity road trips of all things. But we did it once and it was such a success. We're doing it again. So, and as I always say, turn on your electric toothbrush. You'll probably get one of my shows there.
Excellent. What? No, not what?
What?
No, not
electric toothbrush. I don't even know I don't want to know where that's even been. Just go to stilltoken.com. You'll find everything you need to know about us. And yeah, I think that's even in the show notes. I think we made it to the show notes. I think we're in there. And I want to thank Nelson. Great story. I really, really need to read this book. I'll pick it up. My wife will grab it first, I'm sure.
Mhm.
You know,
You can
I don't
read
know
it
if I can-
together. It can be romantic. You can tell each other bedtime stories, one chapter at a time.
Oh, that's a thought. I could read it to her.
Mhm.
No, that wouldn't work. That would just turn her right the fuck off.
Just don't write that in your review on Amazon, please.
Oh,
I read
man.
it to my wife and it turned her right the fuck off. 5-star.
I read it to my wife. Nope, look, Ma, no hands.
Hey, Jeffrey, are you in Palm Springs, Jeffrey?
I are, yes.
All right. Give my love to my very dear friend, Devin Green. I'm sure you run into her all the time.
I will say hello for Devin. I'll say hello to Harlan, and I'll do my best to get into LA and be there with you.
I hope to see you on the 15th. You'll meet my husband. He's coming in for that.
Lucky man.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Well, that's what I keep telling him.
Oh, so on that note, folks, make sure you check the show notes up above or down below to find out all the information you need to find out about Nelson, his book tour, and everything that we didn't get to talk about tonight.
Right.
You know, but to all our veterans and first responders, we want to thank you for doing what you do so people like us can come up here and do what we do. Stay safe. We'll see you next week. We're out of here.
Peace.